I was sharing with Boots before you got here that I kind of sat in and the audience really got into this movie in a major way. Would you guys agree? Yeah. Yeah, they love the movie, man. So, and you, I know you snuck in here for a minute.
Yeah. I came to see what the reaction to the nigga shit scene would be. So
that's the only thing you were interested in seeing?
Well, I had to do some stuff, but I was like, I'm gonna go see that.
All right, man. Well, let's get it started, man. First of all, you and I just met this afternoon. I told you I had an opportunity to see the film at Sundance back in January, watched it again. To me, every time I watch the film, I see more and more of what your vision is about the film. Talk a little bit or share with the audience about, we were talking earlier about the conversation about you living in Oakland now and how the art scene in Oakland kind of played a major part in influencing you and what you actually ended up creating and what we all ended up watching. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, my way that I've always made art, even with the music, is very, it's very reflective of where I live and my surroundings. I mean, I'm really into the details about things because I think that they end up bringing to light, bigger ideas. The more real and detailed you can make something. So, even for that reason, I never moved away from Oakland, even when parts of our music career seemed like maybe we should go there so we could meet more people or whatever. For me, the way things look, the way they smell, the way they feel, that's part of everything I do. And so this was something that, if I wanted to make a really good film, I was going to need to make it be in Oakland and film it in Oakland and use, so for instance, the lettering, my friend J. Otto Siebold, the lettering for the earrings and the Coke and the logos that are on there and the title, it's my friend J. Otto Siebold. He did that. And we had that, before we had producers on board. And and the artwork that Tessa does is my friend Omiru, and he was my neighbor. And I was like, hey, I need some art for it. I'm gonna write your thing in there because I knew I could get it for free. And everything from the music, tune yards. So there's two worlds of music in there. There's the crew that did the soundtrack. We did all the stuff that the characters actually hear in the bar, in the car, wherever. It's what the characters can actually hear. And they're all listening to this one new album by the Coup that comes out in July. So, and then but the Tune Yards did the score, which is the voice of the movie, and we worked on that. We've been working on that since 2015. Just even when it was just a script, us going back and forth with ideas of other films, other influences of scores. And so when I was shooting the movie, and Tune Yards is from Oakland. So when I was shooting the movie, I already had demos of the stuff that could possibly be in those scenes. And of course we changed a lot afterward, but some of the stuff in it, like when the Equisapien falls out, that music that happens there, that was really just the demo that she had made back in 2015, based on, I was like, I think we should draw some stuff from Suspiria. And she read the scene and she was like, okay, how about this? And we did other ones, but we went back to that one because that was what worked. But yeah, so we got so many locations for free. The guy that made this jacket, that's his house. That's the fancy apartment. Walked around the corner. We needed a location for Cassius's garage apartment. Just knocked on doors around the corner, and I guess who had just moved in there was my boy Tyranny. I was like, we need your house next weekend. He's like, cool. And he happens to be one of Marshawn Lynch's managers. And so there's all kind of just connections and things happening throughout the movie.
The idea of making cash as a telemarketer and kind of telling the story through that lens, was that a decision you made that you thought you could bring a lot of levity to a situation like that, or did you have or know somebody that had some experience?
I did. Yeah, I did telemarketing.
Telemarketer.
Yeah, I did telemarketing a couple times. One time during college, and one time in between our second and third albums. I quit doing music because at age 24, I had a midlife crisis where I thought that, I've been doing music. I've been an artist all my damn adult life. What am I doing? And so I stopped doing music, and we created an organization called the Young Comrades. And then publishing money ran out, and I knew I was good at sales. So I did telemarketing because I was good enough to be able to work like one day every 2 weeks, and I didn't have kids yet, so I could do that. But still, even though I was good at it, you feel your soul being crushed because you're using your creativity to just get money from folks.
Did you have a white voice when you did telemarketing?
Yeah, I did. I wouldn't be able. The next question is to do it, but I wouldn't be able to recall that.
So the concept of of using a white voice, I'm trying to figure out where that originated from. Is that something you picked up? Is that something in your writing?
I mean, it happens. Like you realize that you have to do that. There was no Danny Glover type character that came and had to tell me that. You just see who's winning, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do that. And also, so much of sales is about gaining confidence in people, and so basically what you're doing is lying and saying, I'm a white guy, and it changes the whole conversation.
That was close, man. I saw what you were doing there. You pulled it back, though. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the casting. So you've got Lakeith Stanfield, you got Tessa Thompson. You filmed this movie when?
In June and July, 2017.
2017. So
It took 28 days. We had 61 locations.
So these actors were pretty established when you got them.
Yeah, I mean, when I hired Lakeith Stanfield, he was not the Lakeith Stanfield that he is today in the sense of how famous he was. People knew him from Short Term 12 and a small role in Straight Outta Compton and small role in Dope. But people knew how good he was. It just he wasn't like a draw like he is now. Lucky for us, after we hired him, he got more famous. But one of the reasons that I did hire him, because we talked to a lot of people that had a way bigger name than Lakeith did at the time. And for me, what I saw in Lakeith, I saw a lot of things. But one of the things was that he was on a search to get better, to become a better actor. And where you talk to some actors and they're cool with where they are and they just want to get more famous. They want to get better roles, bigger roles or whatever. But he was concerned with stretching himself and becoming better. And I would just, like, he would be doing jobs on the way, like he did the role with Chiwetel, and he called me like all excited and yeah, it just really inspired me, and I'm doing this and doing that now. And I got scared because I was like, okay, what I liked about and still do like about Lakeith is that his approach is so much different than the regular actors. Like, he's more about what he's feeling, and he's not trying to show you. If he's really feeling it, it's going to show. He's not like, oh, when I raise my eyebrow, I look concerned, or doing this is how I show I'm mad. He's just really concerned with getting there and being in that. But he figured out how to get better in his own way. And really, even though he was a great actor when I hired him, the actor that showed up on set was a way better actor than the one I hired. And And that's just a testament to how he looks at his career. And I don't think a lot of the actors that are out there aren't thinking about it in that way. Uh, in terms of that, maybe they'll be a better actor if they search for it. And so yeah, but even though he wasn't as known to the public as he is now, other actors knew how great he was. So when I hired Lakeith, it kind of sent out, a flare that here's a movie where we care about the acting. And so it made other actors be interested in it in a different way than they might have otherwise.
And Tessa Thompson, her presence in the film.
So Tessa, I had written her an email like a year before I even met with Lakeith, just saying, hey, this might be something you'd be interested in or whatever. She didn't answer me. And then after Lakeith came on, about a few weeks later, I get an email from her management being like, thanks for offering us the part, we'll take it. And then I was like, wait, hold up, because no matter how, good someone was or famous or whatever, I was like, what was important to me was, since Lakeith was already on, their fire with Lakeith, like we had to believe that. Because if we didn't, then we start thinking about actors, and then we get out. There's so many ways to get out of this story that I definitely didn't want the actors to be one way to do that. So, we had already been doing chemistry reads, and I had heard that Tessa was offer only. And so I was like, well, then that's not going to happen because I need to see it before we show up. And the schedule seemed like it wasn't going to work. And so, but Tessa was like, I'll do a chemistry read. I'm cool. And then we had, and then it was not going to work out for them to all be in the same place at the same time. So the thing got thrown out there, let's do a Skype one. And so I was cynical about that because we had just been doing chemistry reads like in a room with different actors. And there were some that I generally liked a lot. So I was like, okay, we could do this chemistry read, but I know I'm not going to choose her because I'm not going to be able to see what I need to see. Not meaning like I didn't think she was good, but just I'm not going to be able to prove to myself that I can get what I need out of them both in the same room together. And so we did a Skype with Lakeith in LA, Tessa in New York, and me in Oakland. And there was just fire on the laptop screen. And I was just like, okay, yeah, yeah, that was it. And yeah, and from there, it was all about like making things that reflected and echoed in the right way with the casting, and trying to get, those two. I felt like they would both be doing roles unlike anything that they had done before, and I wanted to continue that casting process. And so, yeah, I think that's what we did with everybody that was on board. And everybody that came on board, Army, Danny, Stephen, Omari, Jermaine, Terry, they all like put so much extra into it, like extra time, extra, we had, with everybody, we were having conversations, for a long time beforehand about the characters and the development and what the movie meant. And all of these actors, they did it for scale, like, and were turning down other things that paid a lot of money. And they all like put in extra, like Army was promoting Cars 3 or something like that, and made Pixar fly. He had 2 days off in London, and he made Pixar fly him to Oakland on our days off to meet and go over scenes with Lakeith, and then fly him back. And they were just all, besides being masters of their craft, just all ready to go the extra mile.
Man, you have so many messages that are in this film. And as I shared with you, I said, you know, every time I watch it, I said it's at the top. This audience really responded well to it. I've seen it with several audiences, and we were talking earlier today about how, in my perception, people come to the movies to be entertained, right? This movie is very entertaining, but is there a fear when you're writing or you're creating not just art for films, but music as well, that people pick up the beat or they'll find the humor in the film but miss the messaging that you're trying to get across to them?
No, I'm not worried about that because I know if it's there, then it's there. I mean, I don't, I don't, I think there are a lot of messages, and that there are some, I wouldn't even put them as messages. I have ideas about the world, and I think all artists put their ideas about the world into their work. And if they're being honest with themselves, at least, because sometimes what we do when we create art, the reason why people do so much cliche is because it's hard for people to be honest with themselves about what they think about the world. Because when you're writing a scene or making a song, what's in your head about what's real is really based on what you've seen in movies and, in other. So, I mean, for instance, I said this before, I've never been to Delhi, but I have a picture in my head, and many of us do. If I say Delhi in India, you got a picture of what it looks like. And that's not even from documentaries or anything like that. That's from probably James Bond movies and, other racist shit, right? So if I was going to somehow I had to write a scene that was happening in Delhi, it would probably contain all kinds of, at the very least, cliches about what that town is like and all that. And even more so, like with just regular, things that go on in movies, like even when you're thinking about plot, okay, where does this person go next? There's always a noontime cafe date in all these movies, like independent and blockbusters. There's a lot of movies end up at a noontime cafe date. How many people have even had a noontime cafe date? Or how many in your life have you had? But they're all over these movies. And that's because the person writing them thinks that that's real life, because they're not even being honest with themselves about their own experiences or their own ways that they look at the world. Most of what we think the world is coming from not even the news or anything else. It's coming from the pictures that have been painted for us by other artists who also were relying on other artists for those pictures. And so we get this really crazy view of the world. But because for 20-something years, I've been trying to avoid cliche and talk about, because first, my first album was really, just like a pamphlet on record, like, this is what I believe in, revolutionary, revolutionary, revolutionary. But I realized that the best way for me to have those ideas was just to talk about things that were personal to me, and at the same time as being honest about them, because then being honest about them means you include your worldview. You connect those personal things to your worldview. So I have had a lot of experience parsing out my real experience from cliche. So when I was writing this, I'm getting into scenes thinking about my real feeling about these things and my real idea about that in the context of it. And the easy thing to do is just to not have those things in there. But then then you get down to cliche, because then you're not talking about everything you think about that. So I had to think about how I would, put some of those feelings in there, and it came through bending the reality that was there and other visual things that really showed what I thought about this stuff. So I'm not like, okay, when we have the papers flying around in back of his head, I need people to know that that's because I think he's frustrated. Hopefully they get that feeling from that. But I'm not concerned with them, missing some little thing I put in there. I also know that people will watch this many times. And I wanted to make a movie that, since that's how people watch movies, would live with that. I think there are overarching ideas that are in this that will carry people through, and everything else is just extra that makes it feel more like a real world.
All right, I want to try to, does anybody have any questions? Because we have a limited amount of time. Right here.
Yes. I noticed you said you drew some inspiration
Project.
from Suspiria. I noticed you say you drew inspiration from Suspiria for the one scene as far as the score.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had any other Giallo influences, because even the scene where Keith was looking at the elevator and it was kind of fuzzy and dreamy around him, it reminded me of like a Mario Bava scene, and the text kind of reminds me of Bay of Blood, the text from that as well.
Mm.
If you had any other Giallo influences.
If I do, it's through other filmmakers, because that scene that you're talking about, he said that he felt like I mentioned Suspiria, and if I had any other influences from that filmmaker, because this scene where he's looking at the elevator kind of seemed like some movie. I haven't seen other Giallo movies, but it's possible that other people that I like have, and that's where that shot to me is stolen directly from a scene in Paul Schrader's Mishima in Temple of the Golden Pavilion, where the character is being drawn towards the pavilion, and there's a kind of a trombone shot that's similar, but he could have taken that from someone else,
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, when we ask questions, we have microphones. I was told we have microphones on the side. So as people are getting to the microphones on the side, I asked you today earlier about Putney Swope, a movie that I compared this to, because that movie is also absurdist. Is that what is? Yeah. So
I don't know.
well, I'm saying people discuss your film in that way, and you told me earlier you hadn't seen that film. So there are a lot of influences that we are woven or weave through your work. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely have a lot of influences, and I wear my influences on my sleeves, but I try to make sure to have a lot of sleeves, and I think that's kind of like what creates something new.
First of all, great film, and it was
Thank
fun
you.
to see Oakland, authentic Oakland, in the backdrop. I noticed the Sundance Institute logos. What's your affiliation? Did you go through the labs?
Robert Redford is my father. No, I did. Yes.
I didn't even hear you.
I said it wasn't a great joke. Yeah. I went through the screenwriters lab and then the directors lab, and it was, the best help for getting this movie made. Not just because when you connect with the Sundance Institute that people are like looking at your project, which they are, but you have all these masters of it's in the screenwriters lab, for instance. There are all these folks that have made things that were amazing, and they're writers. They're just regular people with opinions, and for me, this screenplay was controversial at that place. So, they're arguing with each other about my script. And then you sit there and I came to a realization that nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. And that everybody's just trying to figure out how to make it work and how to make it happen. And people have insights, and many of them are very useful. But the idea that there's these rules and there's a way to do it right which my script already wasn't that, but it reinforced to me that idea that there can be new ways to do things. I know that in searching for those new ways to do things, you can fuck up and it doesn't work, But just that's what I got from that. But then also in the writer's lab as well, there were a lot of notes. Some of them I took. Some of them you're like, you realize that sometimes people say things and what they mean is not exactly what they say, but it's good because that's helpful. You're figuring something out. But then, like one time, this filmmaker, damn, I can't remember his name right now, but he made a movie called Futuro Beach and another one called like Mama Satan. He's from Brazil and lives in Berlin. Kareem Ainous. And he was there, and we, you have these 2-hour meetings with each writer, 2 to 3 or whatever. And he said, hey, at the beginning of the meeting, he said, hey, I think this is dumb. What can I tell you about your script? Your script is your script. I do what I do. You do what you do. I'm just here because they invite me to this resort, free food, all that. And he said, but what I will tell you is I love your lead character. I love Cassius. I just want to protect him and take care of him. I want to hang out with him and have a drink with him and, just be around him. I read that. I feel that when I read it. And he said, that's how I know it's all bullshit because I hate everybody. And we had a long talk, like 3 hours, about people in our lives that had maybe come to different decision points that he had been coming to, and what they did and what that meant in our lives and different things like that. And I realized that I was, at the time, at that point, I had been having Cassius be slapped around like a pinball. Like all these same things were happening, but they just happened to happen to him. And, he was really innocent in all of it. And through that, I realized I needed to give him more agency and own what he was doing and do it on purpose. And doing that reverberated throughout the script and changed other characters, changed their responses and things like that. And that was like a big thing that made the script more real. The other thing that helped me was the labs, was the director's labs, where you get to film like 5 scenes from the movie, and they help you cast it with actors and all that kind of stuff. And so when I, because I've been working on this for years, I finished writing this the first time in 2012, and then we published it on McSweeney's as its own paperback book, packaged with the Quarterly in 2014. And so I had a lot of time to obsess over the whole movie, bringing in, I had like a lookbook of dozens of pictures for every scene. I had made storyboards, and I had storyboarded the first scene because I was like, this is my, declaration, I'm here, And so I had done like this diagram of this figure 8 thing that the camera was doing during the interview scene and going around heads, and like it was, and one of the advisors that week was Rodrigo Prieto, and he was an amazing cinematographer. Did Wolf of Wall Street, some Ang Lee movies, anyway, so I was like, oh, he's gonna love me, and I went and showed him this really complicated thing that I was gonna do, and he was like, oh, that'll be interesting. And by the time we got to, we did a rehearsal the day before, and I realized I was going to miss people's faces and miss, certain lines, and it was just going to be distracting. And I came to him, I said, no, we're not going to do that because of the reasons I just said. And he was like, you're right, but I'm going to insist that you film it that way right now here at the labs, because the danger is that you change your mind and try to do that when you're actually filming. And so it made me like shoot it the way that I had just recently figured out was wrong, just so that I would know. But also, I learned a lot about getting pacing right and all those sorts of things. And it was an invaluable experience for me.
Thank you so much.
All right, sir.
Hi there. So you talked in the discussion about a lot of the casting stuff. So I was wondering how you came across with the idea of casting Patton Oswalt and David Cross as the white voices you chose for the characters.
Well, David Cross and Patton Oswalt were the first people to sign on to the movie. And when I had no money and no producers, it was just the guy with the script. And I mean, I had been doing music and known for doing music, but that was a hindrance, because you come to people and you're like, I'm a musician with the script. I want to make a movie. And they're like, of course you want to make a movie. You probably want to do a shoe line and a chain of restaurants. And, the quality is suspect. And so, yeah, they signed on to it first. And I didn't know what they were going to do, but they were like, use our names, So early on, I was able to be like, David Cross and Patton Oswalt think it's hilarious, and they're down to be involved. So, yeah, David, we had done some crazy show which was, an intersection of a lot of things that I like. We did a show which was our first time performing at First Avenue in Minneapolis, and many people will know what that's all about. It's Prince's thing from Purple Rain, and so we were hyped, and it was a fundraiser to buy an ambulance for Palestine, and he like opened for us. It was sort of a strange thing. And I had his email from way back then, because we're talking about 2002, 2003. And after I wrote the script, I sent it. Luckily, the email worked. And he was like, yeah, send it to my house. And he tells people now that he had no intention of actually reading it. But his assistant was there house sitting and read it. And then when he got there, he was like, his assistant said, you got to read this. So it was just lucky that his assistant was there. And I found a lot of people, got to a lot of people through their assistants, having some knowledge of the stuff that I had done.
All right. Right here.
First off, really love some of the anti-capitalist messages in the movie. Shout out to any socialists in here. I wanted to just ask, with all the crazy visuals going on and crazy ideas like horses, people, and whatnot, were there any ideas that were so crazy you had to leave them on the chopping table?
There were no ideas that were so crazy. There were ideas that got left on the chopping table, but not because they were too crazy, and many that I don't want to say because maybe I'll use them later. But
You can't give us one, man.
I had Detroit had the power to slow things down.
Just because.
I mean, it worked for a whole nother part of the story that isn't there. There was stuff in the script that just didn't get done because of budget and time. When I met with Lakeith the first time, there was a part in the movie where Cassius was it was a non-sexual part, but it was full frontal nudity. And I was like, this is a deal breaker. You want this part, it's gonna be full frontal nudity. And because we need to feel how vulnerable Cassius is right there. He needs to be at his most vulnerable. And, you know, I was explaining this and he cut me off and said, I've been waiting for a role with full frontal nudity. And that's part of how I knew how crazy he was. But when it came down to we're filming, and like I said, we ended up with 61 scenes in 61 locations in 28 days. One of the locations was this interrogation booth. It's in the McSweeney's version. We had this crazy interrogation booth that we actually built, and it was like kind of getting like futuristic kind of, it looked cool. And he was supposed to be in there naked. But we were gonna have to cut something. And we had already been a few weeks in to shooting at this point. So I had to decide what needed to get cut. And I realized, you know, the camera has been up in his face this whole time. And that's as vulnerable as you can get, because his eyes that's the thing that he has that many great actors aren't able to get, is this sense of vulnerability. You know, it's basically like he's been naked this whole time. So we could do away with that.
All right, we got time for one last question on this side.
Sorry I talked so long.
That's why it's the last question.
This is more about the coup, but is your next album going to mention Trump like your last one did?
I don't think my last album mentioned Trump. My only album that mentioned Trump was in '94, right? Oh no, also on party music. Yeah, so I mean, here's the thing: is that and how it mentioned Trump, for folks that don't know, was not in a good light. So, I mean, a lot of you know, and it specifically mentioned him because a lot of rappers were like, you know, were you know, heralding him. And that's not because of rappers. That's because that's what you learn in high school. You learn in high school that this system is a merit-based system, and that all it takes is hard work, and those that aren't rich are not working hard enough. Those that are unemployed are lazy, and those that are rich are smarter or better in some way. And so when we hear songs that emulate that talk about that, they're not coming up with that out of the blue. We got to get schools to stop teaching this stuff, because that's they're teaching. You know, it's illegal to say that we should have a socialist system in school. I don't know if anybody's going to get prosecuted for that, but it's illegal, at least in California. I'm sure that means it's illegal in DC area too. And so that means the ideology that gets pushed, even when a lot of teachers may not have that ideology, is something that makes it seem like this system is fair and merit-based. And so the culture that comes out of that are songs that, you know, are hyped about Trump because that's what people are thinking. And so, you know, but I want to make sure that was, you know, Trump as a member of the ruling class. And so the reason that now all of a sudden a lot of people are talking about him is because he's an elected official. And I'm worried that what will happen with this is that all the problems are being put on as if it's only the Republicans that are doing this, right? And so, you know, and so when a Democrat gets in office, all of a sudden people are silent, you know, like, oh, let's not criticize them because we don't want the Republicans to win. So what ends up happening, like this situation with families getting separated at the border, it's just the next step in the staircase that the Democrats built. They, you know, like we wouldn't be able to be there right now had people been, while Obama was in office, said, no, okay, maybe we like you for that, but fuck you. We're not doing that, right? That's not, I mean, I'm not, you know, I consider myself to the left, obviously, of even the Democratic Party, but I'm saying that's an entrance point. Like, if you are someone supporting Democrats, they should be adhering to your political belief, not you changing your political belief to support them, you know? And that is what happens. So what then the evil genius of Trump is that he is pulling the Democratic Party to the right. Because what happens is now they just have to get somebody in that's 2 inches to the left of Trump, and people will be happy. They'll be like, don't say anything about that because they're to the left of Trump, right? The policies and, you know, and they don't. So, and we saw it happen with the anti-war movements that started in the early 2000s. I mean, obviously there's been anti-war movements before, but these particular ones that came after 9/11, there were huge anti-war movements that built up. And once John Kerry started running against Bush, it's weird to think that a lot of you are too young to remember this. But once John Kerry started running against Bush, a lot of people that were at the heads of those anti-war movements said, well, we got to get Bush out because Bush is why we're at war. And so they supported John Kerry and lied to people and said, what we got to do is put all our energy behind Kerry. And Kerry wasn't even against the war. They lied in papers. IndependentVoter.com and PunkVoter.com said he was against the war, even though they knew he wasn't. And an anti-war movement just dissipated and turned into a pro-Kerry movement. Built up again. That anti-war movement then dissipated and turned into a pro-Obama movement. Then the anti-war movement was gone for a long, long time because Democrats are in office. And so the thing is that the reason why in this album I won't specifically talk about Trump is because I think that the problem is bigger than that. When we talk about elected officials, we talk about puppets who are controlled by puppet masters. And what this film lays out is a way that through withholding of labor, you can demand an exact negotiation from the puppet masters instead of just from the puppets. And it's something that basically it's having a class analysis instead of talking about all of these little things that happen as if they're just coming out of nowhere. You know, there's a way to analyze the system where we understand that there's a way to change it. And so I think that analysis gives people an optimism. It gives people an optimism because we really look at how the world works and look at building a unity for a reason. So I'm talking too long.
Yeah, so before we get out of here, Boots, let me just say that the movie opens in select markets.
Select markets, July 6th, every damn city on July 13th. And we need your help getting it out there, because even if you think everybody knows about this and everybody's talking about it, that's because that's how social media works. The algorithm shows you the people that already like the things you like. But we can break through that if there are a lot of people posting about it, because then your cousins that are in Idaho or in Louisiana or whatever, they see your post. about it, and we can break out of just the cool people that know about films earlier and stuff like that. But hopefully when you post about it, you don't give up any spoilers. You know, don't tell people, oh, there's this twist in the third act after he goes down the hallway. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but the green door. And then, you know, just exactly. Exactly. I put that in there because I really don't know the difference. Yeah, but please don't spoil it, but we do need your help. I think that the film could be something that opens up things for other filmmakers of color and filmmakers in general to do things that I mean, like a lot of meetings were like, what film that has made a lot of money is this like? You know, and there is not anything. And hopefully, and filmmakers of color have to even more play that game if they're trying to make their film. So hopefully this can open it up and make the game be open a little bit more.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for Boots Riley.